Welcome to the very first podcast of Voice for Good. My name is Elliot Kay, and I am going to be leading you through the series and this whole range of different podcasts, all about entrepreneurs, innovators, pioneers, people that are using their voice for good in their industry. We'll have a range of different entrepreneurs, business owners, psychologists, scientists. We'll have a whole range of different people that I will interview who I feel are doing and using their voice for good for the industry. But instead of me talking about the podcast the whole time, I've drafted in one of my best friends who just happens to be a rock star, superstar DJ on Planet Rock. And I'm going to hand it over to him to interview me because that's what he does very well. He's interviewed some of the biggest names in the industry. So I figured who better person to interview me about my very own podcast, Voice for Good. So please welcome Wyatt Wendels, who's going to interview me. Wyatt, welcome to the podcast of you interviewing me about
Thank you. That is the weirdest intro ever. An
I know.
interviewer being been introduced
It's
by
so
an interviewee.
strange. I
Yeah.
know. But there we go. So here we are.
Here we are. Listen, I think, firstly, I think this is a great thing to do. I mean, I know on one hand you could say, well, people are at home a lot and podcasts and they're popping up all over the place. But I think good.
Yeah.
And I've no doubt, before we even talk about what it is, yours will not be doing it by numbers. I know you're not going to be doing it for the sake of it.
No,
And I know you're not jumping on a bandwagon because I
definitely
know
not.
you and I know your work ethic. And I know you won't go into it lazily. It will
No.
be well thought out. You're going to prove me right now because when we talk about it, I don't want to be sitting there thinking, oh my God, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Why is he doing it?
No,
So
definitely not. It's been thought out for months. It's been strategized. Everything I do has a reason. It's definitely not a bandwagon. It's not numbers led, although I welcome the numbers
of course.
as we grow. But yes, it is about adding value. It is about leading and shining the light on people doing great in the industry. It's certainly not about me as the podcast, because then I would call it Elliot Kay's podcast, right? It's definitely about shining the light on amazing people out there who are doing amazing work.
So it's called Voice for Good. The concept, did it come about because of the pandemic or is it just timing? It's a coincidence. It almost came before.
It came before, one of our key hashtags, you were heavily involved in the book. And so you'll know from the book that we talk a lot about using your voice for good. And we talk about, using your voice for good to impact industries, to impact change. And when I was renaming the podcast, because actually originally it was called Speak to Grow Your Business, and it was led by my business partner, and she actually left the country. And I thought, well, let's bring the podcast back, but what's more in line with the current brand? What's in line with our messaging? And obviously one of our leading is always use your voice for good. And one of my closings when I always close a podcast is be seen, be heard, use your voice for good. So why not have a podcast called Voice for Good?
Elaborate on it. I mean, it's easy to say, use your voice for good, but typically when you're talking to any kind of guest from for industry, what does it actually mean to use your voice for good? And I don't just mean say your prayers, take your vitamins, don't answer your mother back. I mean, proper tangible. What does it actually mean? Can you summarize it? Is it possible to summarize it in a couple of paragraphs?
In a couple of paragraphs.
Or is it a philosophy almost?
I think it's a philosophy. I could probably summarize in a couple of paragraphs.
It can be longer.
Yeah, let's take you, right? You have a platform, you have followers on social media, you listen to daily on the radio. And so you currently, you literally is your voice, is your career. We're not talking limited to voice, radio, things like that. But beyond that, you do a lot of work in the mental health space, right? You raise awareness and you're using your influence to impact industries and people's lives. And that's what we talk about. So if you look at a lot of people that come through, that build businesses, they have a responsibility to express themselves to change industries for the better. And that's what this is about. It's not about, let me use my voice when I, because we focus on public speaking training, right? Let me use my voice so I can manipulate people and I can get them to sign up and work with us and we'll deliver zero value and we won't educate them. They're literally the other side of that. You lead with value, you lead with heart, you lead with empathy, regardless of the industry you're in. It's all about how do you use your voice to create positive change. And I don't mean hippie, sit down, kumbaya, banana meditating, right? I mean positive, lasting, industrial, deep-rooted change in the industry you're in. And there's so many industries that need that. We want to inspire people to do that, and therefore Voice for Good is a way into that.
Are there typical industries that you'd want to target, or is it almost educational from your point of view, in the sense that it's almost a blank canvas where you'd like to almost hear from everyone, not just to make up the numbers, but because you think everyone's got a story, and from a personal point of view, it could be of value and interest to you just to hear how someone, I don't know, it could be a weatherman talking about how to spread positivity, it could be a CEO of a company, or it could be a faith healer. I'm just pulling out of thin air three completely different walks of life. Is it a blank canvas, or are you looking at specific areas you'd like to hear from?
So what we're doing is seasons, and the season has a theme. So this season, I can't even say it. This season is the talk that made you, right? And you're going to be interviewed on that, and we're going to talk about what was that talk that really elevated you, that you felt things changed. Then season 2 is going to be all about confidence. And in that respect, I want to explore the notion of confidence generally, not just from a speaking point of view. So I want to speak to neuroscience. I want to speak to scientists, psychologists. I want to speak to, practitioners, confidence hypnotherapists. I want to speak to speakers that suffer from terrible anxiety. So it is a blank canvas because it's about the subject, and whoever I feel can contribute to that, I'm really fascinated to hear. And I think you have to have natural curiosity in the topic, because if I
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
like I knew it all, then there'd be no enthusiasm for me to do it. But yes, recording season 1, I've interviewed such a variety of people that it's just fascinating. I hear their story, I hear their approach, I hear how their life changed as a result of doing that talk that changed me. And that's anything from a guy who got grabbed by this guy in a coffee shop in London, and now he spreads the word of meditation because of that one conversation, or this woman that had set a date to kill herself, went to the Philippines, went to an orphanage, or was it Vietnam? One of the two. And, this orphanage asked her something, and that whole conversation she had with this orphan who was dying changed and stopped her from killing herself. So it's amazing, the stories, and it's amazing as a result how these people are using their voice for good. So it's a canvas, it's an open book, and it's whoever I feel can contribute to that theme of the season.
I know you're like me on this. We find inspiring stories the most inspiring. I know that sounds obvious, but let me expand on it. If you had and I don't know how you would tout for these kind of guests. You can't really put an advert online that says ruined your life, lost everything, but came back, get in touch. But the kind of stories where people say, well, I went to school, I got a great education, I went to university, I graduated with a master's, and then I set up my own business. My life just went like that. And let me tell you how I got to the top and stayed there. Yeah, they're all well and good. But for people like you and me, there's something more inspiring and interesting in someone who was broken, dare I say, lost things, be it physically, emotionally, mentally, and then came back from the brink. I often make the comparison about, you've got a boxer who spends his whole career undefeated. That's amazing. That truly is. And they can be inspiring. But then you have a boxer who, like the person who was undefeated, had 50 fights, but he lost 3 of them. But the 3 he lost, he came back and beat the person who beat him. I personally find them more inspiring, and I'd be more, without disrespect to someone, and they're probably thinking, well, I've got this brilliant career and nothing went wrong. Why would you not want to talk to me? But there's something more real and inspiring and tangible to people who have suffered and struggled. And that's not saying I want you to suffer first. And I think that you'll probably gravitate to those kind of stories as well, because they're more inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. Again, the scope, just because you've had a good life doesn't mean you can never come on my podcast, right? But I agree.
That's not what I'm saying either. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it is always interesting when people overcome adversity and they've turned their life around, and something that happened to them, and now they're literally out there, you know, using their voice for good, or transforming industries, or they're raising mental health awareness, or whatever they choose to do because of their broken past, and they've recovered. I think you and I will know this because I think we've had a path in that. We've had our adversity, we've had our downfalls, we've picked ourselves up. We still do. We still have our own battles, which is probably why we gravitate to those stories. And yes, I find those. I was down and out. I was in the dumps, and I picked myself up, and now I do this highly inspiring, especially when all odds are against them, and especially when the easiest thing to do is to give up, or appears to be. I don't think giving up is an easy thing, by the way. And I feel that those are the people that people want to hear about. Like, who wants to hear, no disrespect, but in school, like, I got married, I've got a beautiful wife, I've had a great
Yeah.
career, everything's been great. Yes, we argue every now and then, but it's okay, we make up. And I'm sure there is an audience for that, and good for them. That's just not my audience. And inspiring adversity, overcoming challenge, losing everything, rebuilding, because those are the people that tend to turn around and use their voice for good as well. I recently heard a horrific story. Can't remember the name, but there's this woman in India. She's terribly abused. She's quite famous, but I can't remember her name. And her husband's abusing her, and she was giving birth, and her husband chased her out the house. She ends up giving birth in the street. He cuts the umbilical cord with a stone, right? And she's lying there. It's a terrible story, but as she's lying there, she's noticing the orphans that don't have anything, that don't have a house, and they're sleeping. And then she goes on and sets up all these orphanages, right? Do you see? It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
like the depth of human courage is just, the depth of human strength is amazing. And that's what I want to explore when I interview people. That's what really gets my juices going.
Well, I think in more modern times, you find the best of humanity in the worst of inhumanity, if you see what I
Yeah.
mean. And I think the timing for something like Voice for Good is perfect in the right way. It's not opportunistic, because we're in an awful situation, and the people that you want to speak to, you will find there would be plenty of people that are inspiring that you can talk to, not just because the downfalls of the society we're currently in means they've got more to say. They are literally more accessible. Things like the podcasts, Zoom platforms, clean feed, Audition, pick your audio format. It means it's easier to get heard and be seen. So what would be a tip? I mean, what are you hoping the format will be? What's a typical guest that you're looking for? And I'm not saying you need to know their name, their age. I'm not saying you have to profile them, but what's an ideal podcast volume 5? And if you were video boarding it or scripting it, and you thought, okay, I want these boxes ticking, what would be the perfect deal for you? And you think, yeah, I want to share this with people.
Well, I can kind of tell you the guests I would love to interview, and that might help answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's kind of like my bucket list for interviews, if you know what I mean. So Kevin Hart would be one of them, right?
Yeah.
Not just because he's incredibly funny, for those who like and find him funny. Maybe people don't find him funny, that's allowed to, but because of who he is as a person and because of the journey he's been on to get to where he is, right? Fascinating. I'd love, and now he really does use his voice for good, and he's all about empowerment and personal development and people achieving their goals, and he's very loyal to the people around him. So I would love to interview him. David Goggins is another one. He was kind of titled the World's Strongest Man. Again, huge achievement what no one else has achieved. Huge, huge output of incredible experience. And people like, I don't know if you know Amy Cuddy, Brené Brown. They've done TED Talks that have been massively watched. So Amy Cuddy pioneered power poses for people with confidence issues. Brené Brown talks about the power of vulnerability. So she was a market researcher, and she researched shame. And then from that, she developed the whole power of vulnerability. Those are the people I would love to get on the podcast. So if I was to storyboard, and like I've got a vision board and they're all on the vision board, because I feel those people epitomize using the voice for good. When I look for someone to interview, I look for someone that can contribute to the theme of the season, that has experience, that has insights, that has understanding, not just, oh, I'd love to be interviewed on your podcast. Let's do it. For example, when I did season 1, the talk that made you, that automatically eliminated so many people because they've never experienced doing that one talk, that everything changed for them, right? So I look for those categories when I'm looking for someone.
Well, one of your seasons could be How I Came Back.
Yes, true. Season 3. We could
season
look at
3.
that.
Yeah, How I Come, because we've alluded to the fact that we we like a comeback, not in a rocky Hollywood ending kind of way, but some of the greatest stories come from the depths of loss and despair. So, how I came back, how I returned, the fall
Yeah,
and rise, if
definitely.
you will.
There you go. You've just given me season 3. We can start recording
There
that
you go.
at the beginning of next year. So November, I'm starting season 2, which is all about confidence, and then we can look at season 3. Awesome. How I came back. You heard it here first.
There you go.
Always
Happy
for
to
good.
help. How long are you? I mean, in your mind, like for example, when I do a series of events or episodic things, I try and it. I say this, it never goes to plan. I try and think in my head, okay, I'm looking at 4 episodes, 5, and then it turns into 10 or 2.
Yeah.
Have you got an end game in sight? Or is it just one of those roll with it and just keep it going as long as realistically possible?
I think someone asked me that the other day. I think a season for me is when I feel it's fulfilled. I mean, some people do 40, right? And they're like, oh, you need
Yeah.
40 in a season. You need one every week. I'm more about serving the cause. So when I feel I've got enough, the talk that made me, I've already got 15, right? Then I'll do a few more and I'm like, okay, I think we're done now. And I'd say minimum 20, but I'm not stuck to that. Confidence, I know, will just fill up. I just know I'm going to get loads of people on that. So that might be 40. So for me, it's about fulfilling the cause. It's about taking my date out and giving her the right treatment. So, and then when it's the right time, we say thank you and good night. Did that
Yeah.
even work as a metaphor?
Yeah, I've seen how you date, so I would question that method.
Yes, that's true. I'm not sure that was the right one to use, but I was trying to use some form of a metaphor. But I'll
Yeah,
just,
I
I'll
kind of
just.
get it as a concept, but not from you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Why did I
Yeah.
invite you to interview me? No, but yes, so that's what I'm foreseeing. Just let's fill up as much as it needs, and then we move on.
And then, and what? Not marketing, I guess. Marketing and promotion. Where will it be? Where are you looking into to show it and get it seen?
Yeah, a lot of it will be through social media and the database until we've got the numbers for it to be picked up by some of the big guns. Sponsors are welcome if sponsors want to come on board. I know right now when you're starting out, my numbers just aren't interesting for sponsors, but we can grow that. But then I want it to be on all major podcasting platforms, and
I
then
was
in
going
the
to say, yeah,
charts. We
yeah,
want
the
it to be,
streaming platforms, your iTunes and things like that.
yeah, basically iTunes, Spotify, and get them on the charts. In the top 10 would be ideal. If we talk about that storyboard, let's get them into the top 10, if not the number one. But then I know who I'm up against, and I'm up against some major influencers with 100 million followers. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, not yet. I mean, you got to give it a go. Why not?
Exactly. Let's go
How can you
crazy.
know if you don't even try? I can't believe I'm quoting a
Exactly.
Coldplay lyric. Oh my god.
There you go. We know you love Coldplay.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's always good to catch up, and I look forward to seeing it because obviously I know you, I know how you do business, I like your style, and I like the work ethic and the person behind it because in my job, I know nonsense. I know when something's fake. I can
Yeah.
sense it. I have no sense of smell in real life, but I just know there's always tells, and it's real. And I have to say, and as a compliment to you, your previous lack of professional experience in this is a good thing because it makes you more real.
Oh,
There's no
great.
there's no fakery. You don't use buzzwords, you don't use buzz phrases. It's obvious you've not been on the internet and looked at YouTube videos and trying to pretend to be someone you're not. And
Mm,
and I say this as a supposed professional. I say it because it makes you better place. It makes you more real, and you should never underestimate the power of that. So I would say if ever you fill out your depth, don't, because you have a personality that's not fake. Even your on air personality, it's real because I know you, and I
mm,
would say to your fair, I can tell you're nervous, or that's not really you. You don't do that, and it's real. And so you were saying about the influence. Don't worry about the influence. Don't ever
mm.
get an inferiority complex because of the numbers game. And like
Great.
I say, and I think one of your best weapons, ironically, is your lack of professional training, your lack of previous on air or on, you haven't got like a long storied career in voiceovers, for example, but
Hmm.
it's real. And that is one of your biggest weapons to carry forward. And that is the honest truth I can and say to you, and that you'll be in good shape. You will. I know you'll get the guests. I know you will probably exceed the episodes and the seasons you want because of you. And the guests are great, But if they're talking to an idiot, they will give you nothing. I can tell you
That's
that
true.
from experience.
Yeah.
They will give you nothing. They think, who's this guy? Let's get off. So I'm not going to wish you well because I know it's going to be well. And I'm looking forward to seeing your journey. I'm looking forward to watching the episodes as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Wyatt. And thank you for interviewing the interviewee or the interviewer. Anyway, you've been brilliant. You, of course, will be featured as well. So watch out for your own podcast coming out being interviewed by me. So
Yeah, I know. Reversal of fortunes.
I know, but yeah, thank you for interviewing me for our very first Voice for Good. And I will end it as I end every single one, as you will hear moving forwards. Be seen, be heard, and always use your voice for good. Till the next episode. Bye.